What's up YouTube? Today we are looking at a new plugin called Rando, which is a randomizing sampler. So this video was actually sponsored by MonkeyC, which is the company that created this plugin. So I'm going to try steer away from giving you too much opinions and that kind of thing. It's also one of those plugins that kind of just does a workflow thing. So there's not really much opinion that I can have about it. It either does the thing that you want or not, and you can make the decision. So I'm going to kind of show you what it does and, how I've been using it, and then you can kind of make up your own mind. So I'm going to try to remain as unbiased as possible, but just to be completely transparent upfront. Anyway, the thing that it does is essentially harness the power of all of your samples in your sample folder, which I know you probably have this issue as well. I know I do. We all have too many samples. And when we're diving through those samples and searching for them, the process of doing so is not very intuitive. So Rando essentially tries to solve that issue. What it does is you feed it the location of your samples folders, and it essentially just randomizes a keyboard full of different samples, which you can then play. You can isolate certain samples and then change the envelopes and do all sorts of things, add effects. You can lock them and carry on randomizing other ones to kind of create this more intuitive way of randomizing a set of samples for your track. So anyway, let me show you some of the features. So I've already set this up, but what happens when you first open the plugin is it prompts you to select a sample location. So you can always jump back and kind of edit that at a later stage here in the settings. What you can also do is you can choose specific sample locations. So for example, I've got a directory with like all my samples in it, but you don't necessarily have to do that. You can kind of split it up into subdirectories. So say for example, you have like just drum sounds or just other sounds. You can kind of feed it these singular folders instead. And what you can also do is you can kind of choose how it randomizes through those sounds. What it does is it kind of like sorts the sounds, and it knows what is a drum sound, it knows what is a one shot or a loop, and you're able to isolate those. So say for example, we don't want any loops, we just want a bunch of drum sounds. We can open up the randomize settings, we can select just the drum sounds, just the one shots, and randomize. And you can see here, it's taken from a sample directory of 4,356 results and essentially just randomized our full keyboard with different samples. So it's a super simple kind of idea, but randomization and happy accidents, as we call them, is something that I often use in my workflow. Especially when we're stuck in creative block or something like that, when we don't know where to go. Just having something which you can hit a button, it gives you a kind of selection of sounds, which you can then go from there, is pretty powerful. So here you see you've got the samples locations here on the side. If, for example, we have a location which is just like drum sounds, or just, let's say, cherry pies, for example, or mud pies, whatever you like to call them, you can even isolate those selections even further by saying just the stuff from this folder, or just the stuff from this folder, etc. So you can see here it's kind of isolated those results down even further. I'm sure that your sample folder is even bigger than mine, because I try to keep mine super lightweight so that I don't have to cycle through them and kill that kind of workflow. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, this might not result in anything truly special because it's random, and some of the sounds that I've got in my sample directory are pretty weird. But let's see what we can come up with. One of the other cool things about this is that we can actually select the root note over here, and it's going to shift the pitch of each of the samples to the root. So that, for example, like if we have something that's tonal, in this case it's more drum sounds, it won't really need to be kind of tuned. But there are several other settings that we can choose here. For example, like the envelope settings and that kind of thing. So by default, these settings are per sample, and you can actually add effects and all sorts of things per sample or per key. But if you hold shift, you can actually apply things to the entire bank of samples. So what we want to do is hold shift and turn the sustain down all the way. And so now essentially what we've done is we're basically taking the tail out of all of these sounds. And we can hold shift and then use this decay to create just like kind of micro sound of each of the transients of the sounds. So this is a really cool way of just getting like random grooves, you know. So like now, for example, let's just go in here, audition some of these sounds. That's cool. And what we can do is we can actually put these notes in like this, and then we can use something like the arpeggiator to randomize what note is being played. And that way, essentially just creating like random pitch generator. And in this case, what it's going to do is it's going to basically just randomly trigger the different samples. Okay, so let's go ahead and add Bitwig's arpeggiator over here. And we can set this to random mode. And remember, there's like 88 different samples here. It's like across the entire keyboard. So we could just select all of this and just kind of like randomly select from all of the notes. Just shift this down all the way. That way we can get like quite a huge range of sounds to actually choose from. Okay, so I see it only goes down to C0. So let's take out these bottom 2 octaves. And it goes up to C6. So let's take out the top few octaves. Cool. So with these kinds of things, what I usually do is I will create a couple of bars of this. You know what? Let's just do in 4 bars, and then we can bounce. And I will see which one of these do I prefer the most. So we can actually just mute that. Cool, so we could just render a bunch of those, drop those in here, and jump in there, randomize them again, and see like which sounds suit the groove better, you know what I mean? Okay, so here let's go in, hit the randomize button. So we may have to, you know, every time we randomize, we may have to just jump in and reset the envelope settings. So this is also really cool for like a source for processing and that kind of thing. So let's say, for example, let's put a vocoder on here, and we can try and make something a little bit more tonal out of the drum samples that are being generated by Rando. So here's a fun fact. The plugin actually has an internal sequencer. So that entire thing that I did with the arpeggiator, kind of useless. I can generate random rhythms directly inside the plugin. So the sequencer has up to 64 steps, and you can randomly generate what is actually playing in the sequence. So not only can you randomize what samples are loaded in the plugin, you can actually randomly generate your own sequences directly within the plugin. You can actually create some swing and some space. What that does is it basically removes some of these steps at random. What I usually do is just generate to my heart's content, try find some grooves, export those into the project. Another thing that's actually pretty cool that they've introduced in one of the later updates is this randomized similar. So as you can see here, this particular key has a clap sample loaded. We can actually randomly choose from just clap sounds. So that's going to give us only similar types of sounds. Say, for example, you've got an arrangement of samples and you just want a slight variation on each of these sounds to kind of create different grooves. Very, very easy to do that from directly within the plugin. Another fun fact is we've got some effects slots for each of the keys or each of the samples that's loaded into the plugin. We have a filter with various types, chorus with various types, distortion, etc., etc. And like I said, each of them has various different types which you can cycle through, as well as an XY kind of screen to dial in some of the parameters. Like I said, these are per sample, so you can actually get really, really in-depth with the different kind of sound designs that you're putting on each of the samples. I'm getting carried away. So yeah, like I said, harnessing the power of random can sometimes lead to good things. It can sometimes lead to absolute trash. So it's always a good idea to create what I call cherry pies. A lot of other people call them mud pies. Similar concept is where you just create a bunch of loops and samples and that kind of thing. And then what I generally do is I'll just kind of like arrange them in like an order, something kind of random, and then just consolidate those into a clip and bounce it as a larger kind of clip. What we can do though is let's name this, for example, cherry pie, and then the date, blah, 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 and then the key and possibly the tempo as well. And I think this is D sharp. And so now what we do is we render this or bounce it, and then we can, and then the resulting sound, we can double click, right click, show in Explorer, and then I want to drag this into my samples directory. So let's say Control C, drop this into cherry pies, whatever folder you have in your sample directory. The power of doing this is now not only can we draw from that folder if we're looking for loops, but we can also load it up in Rando and just randomize through all of our cherry pies to just randomly inspire us with a kind of larger contextual arrangement of sounds, you know, like as a loop, not just as the drum sound. Do you know what I mean? And then you can pitch them to whatever your project is and that kind of thing. So yeah, anyway, I think that about sums it up for today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. A huge thanks to MonkeyC for making this video happen, and thanks to you for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments, and yeah, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.